Welcome to Face Values, the podcast where we peel back the layers of cosmetic surgery and skincare to help you understand how your skin is aging and what you can do about it. I'm Dr. David Jack. I'm a cosmetic doctor and skincare brand founder. I'm based in London. I've got clinics in London and Edinburgh. I've got a real interest in just understanding more about how the skin ages. So I'm going to be joined by lots of guests who are real experts in the field. So I hope you enjoy and keep tuning in. So welcome to Face Values. I'm here with Salima, who has been co-hosting many of the episodes with me, and also Jen Cox, who is a psychoanalyst.
Yeah.
All-round amazing person.
Thank you.
Who co-hosts Salima's other podcast.
Yes, Women Are Mad.
Women Are Mad. And so we decided it would be quite a good idea today to talk about aspects of aesthetics and skincare, how things have changed recently in relation to psychology, the way people think and feel about themselves. So, Jen, I know you have some things to say about this. So,
I have a few things to say, David.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's surprising. Yes.
So, okay, it can be thought of as a psychological procedure, what you offer,
very
David.
much.
Can't
yes,
it?
It can.
So I guess I have some questions for you as well.
Yes, please.
But maybe I could just say a little bit about sort of psychoanalytically how we might think about the notion of changing our faces, even in small amounts. So there's this brilliant contemporary Freudian analyst called Alessandra Lemma that's written a lot about this. And there are some kind of core tenets that she brings to the table. The first really is to do with playing with the kind of similarity and difference to our parents and trying to sort of control this. So that's one. And then a second large point is our attempt to avoid the pain associated with loss of desire. So as we age, but also we can apply that to if we look different than we were born looking, then we can't be rejected. It's not us.
Sure.
We're sort of hiding behind something.
Yes,
And then the kind of point extended from that is to do with being able to kind of expel something that we're not happy with about ourselves. So, when people deliberately need to come in and change something specific on their face. And that's, very likely keyed into something more deeply psychological,
Yeah.
And can be really valid. Like, let's be honest, because our society is so fascistic when it comes to appearance.
That's a great word. It really is now.
Is,
in terms of social media, it really is fascistic. That's a great
And I think this is then a large thing that we should talk about.
Yeah.
And I know you wanted to kind of bring in was the changes that are almost now expected of us as women.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are pressures on men.
There are, for sure. Yeah.
But I guess I can't talk to those as clearly. And I think, there are undeniably changes in our brain associated with the amount of time we're, spending on our phones, how the structure, the sort of architecture of social media keys in so perfectly to the architecture of our,
So question for both of you, actually, then. Do you think that with the advent of social media and with how we live our lives, staring deep into our phones and being bombarded with these images more and more and more quickly, is that changing our expectations on how we age? And is that changing our expectations just on how we look?
I think so, yeah.
Do you see that in your practices?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think definitely for younger people, for sure, that there is now a kind of expected look that people will want to adhere to or feel that they should adhere to.
Right.
In men, like what you were kind of alluding to, I think there's a lot about body changes and being super fit and lean and everything like that men now
and
feel
hairless.
pressure and hairless.
That's a big one.
And more hair. Like I had a hair transplant, so
hair
like
in the
maintaining
right
hair in the right places
Yes.
very important as well. So more and more men starting to take finasteride to maintain hair, doing hair transplants, these sorts of things. which I think has definitely been driven by social media for sure, and also knowledge of the availability of these sorts of things as well. But I think that generally speaking, the kind of knowledge of these things has increased, which has then kind of fed into people feeling that, oh, we can do these things now, and maybe I'm not good enough if I don't do these things and stuff. So
there's something about the availability,
I think so, yeah.
and that sort of keys into an expectation that, well, if it's there, I should take it up.
It's quite dystopian, isn't it?
Dystopian, yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And then also, I guess it's something about what we were sort of talking earlier about, which is, I think, how babies are wired, from the get-go to faces and features and the alignment of faces and features. And the mirror neurons kind of they develop with the expectation of certain kind of cues and mobility of facial feature. So what happens when our faces become a bit more frozen?
Yeah, totally.
Or when the alignment begins to change? Like, how does that feed back in to our development, to our brain development?
Yeah.
So there's something incredibly deep about this.
I think so. And I think in relation to, particularly to like over-botoxed, overfilled faces within a particular group of people, then that becomes the expected norm of these people. It's like the Annabels face.
Right.
The Annabels face. Yeah,
and you see everybody looking the same.
Yes.
And then if somebody doesn't look quite the same, then they're kind of feel slightly ostracized from their peer group.
But
And
also, don't you think it's such a
how has that become a normal thing? It's
and also
quite terrifying.
It is terrifying.
In this dystopian society, doesn't it become such a mark of wealth?
Yes.
Or lack of wealth?
Yeah.
Increasingly, what does a 50-year-old look like without anything or with access to everything, and who wants to dive in?
Yeah.
Those 50-year-olds look very different.
They would look really different.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting comparing like 40-year-olds now to 40-year-olds in the 90s.
Yeah.
So I remember I saw something on Facebook, I think it was, where there was a picture of Steve Martin and I can't remember, Diane Keaton.
Yeah.
In a film, and they were supposed to be in their early 40s when it was filmed in the 90s, and they looked like what we'd think of as people who are maybe in their 60s or 70s now. Yeah, I mean, partly due to what they were wearing, but also their faces as well.
Oh my!
So it's quite interesting
But
how things have changed quite quickly.
So quickly with that, and kind of really by stealth.
Yeah.
But I suppose, but accelerated by the social media,
by social
isn't
media,
it?
yeah,
It's
for
like
sure.
ramping it all up.
Yeah.
But what do you think in terms of like that example with it can't be that everybody now in their kind of 40s, 50s is having adjustments to their faces. So what is it?
I think this is partly people in the public eye, I guess, which most people now will be doing stuff. But generally, I think more people are doing these things, so there is a different expectation, maybe.
So there's a democratization of it.
Yeah.
But it's still expensive.
So to an extent, but
Is
it's
there a
still expensive. Yeah.
democratisation?
Well, but
never
then
gonna
I
be
guess you
cheap.
get the cheaper clinics offering things that are maybe a
that's
bit
true.
Yeah.
scary. I'm sure you have thoughts about that, David.
Yeah. Certainly.
But what do you think in terms of people coming into your clinic and asking for certain procedures that you might think, I just don't think you should have more of that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't get that too much nowadays, I have to say.
Because you're known for a natural look, aren't
'cause
you?
I've really distanced myself hugely from that, and most of my patients are slightly older, that they basically don't want to look like they've had anything done, that they feel they should do something.
This is your magic.
Which is quite interesting. Yeah, but I think that when people shouldn't be doing things, then like it's your responsibility as a doctor and a healthcare provider ultimately to say no to people.
Have you said no much?
All the time.
Yeah.
I mean, like even with people that I think it's just maybe you're not going to see a difference with things, then you have to. But thankfully, very rarely will I see anybody who is kind of younger wanting to change themselves particularly. Now, when I was starting all of this, like 16 years ago, working in Glasgow and working in a kind of very ordinary clinic, I definitely saw that, and it was lots of people wanting to do lip fillers and get big cheeks and things like that, and it just wasn't very me at all. But like, it was quite scary the way that people wanted to look a particular way because their friends were, and
because their friends were. That's
because this is what
intriguing.
they'd seen on I guess at that time it would have been
Towie.
or
Yes.
maybe Chelsea or something like that.
Maybe this is where it all kind of started
I
kicking
think so.
off.
Yeah. I think reality TV has a
Yeah,
lot to
reality
answer
TV. Oh, we were
for it,
trying to remember the name of that genre the other day.
Yes.
Yes. Reality TV, that's it.
Yeah.
What do you both think about this tribalism, like you're saying about the Annabels Face, you know, the mimicry? Do you see this, both of you, even in terms of a psychological setting? Do you see this kind of tribalism
Yeah.
even with one's brain?
Yes.
As well?
Definitely. I mean,
Really?
it's really funny because I was saying to Salima earlier, like, I've only just really joined social media in terms of professional stuff.
Yeah.
And I was very happy without it in my life. I must say, I didn't know any different. Well, I now realise I was much happier
Sure.
without
Yeah.
it, fewer headaches.
Yeah.
But I guess what I now think, having stepped in, is that I think the work I'm doing is kind of more not relevant, that's a bit extreme, but sort of I need to know what this stuff is, like in terms of what people are doing facially, but in terms of what is happening with their brains as a result of you know, these phones, the changing architecture. There is no doubt that this is changing people's you know, neurological mapping, and I think there is something that kind of universalizes like the human experience around this modern phenomenon, and it is to do with things like speed. Like we our focus is off. You know, we need things. Even us who presumably can also still read books, but maybe would prefer to pick up our phone.
Yeah, I have to be much more disciplined these days to make myself read a novel.
Yeah.
I devoured them. That was me as a geeky teenager.
Yeah.
And 20-something, I was just a geeky little kid with massive big books. Now I have to think.
Yes,
Come on,
Yeah.
Salima.
Your brain. So our brains aren't very plastic as adults. They're certainly not compared to you know, teens and childhood. So the fact that our brains have changed this fast within basically kind of a couple of years of like you know, intensive
long.
exposure.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not long, and probably not even that intensive exposure compared to most other adults out there.
Yeah.
So what on earth, in terms of babies, children, teenagers now, their brains must, I reckon if you put us in scanners, we'd look, well, it's a bit like you're comparing, you know, the faces of
Yes,
10 years ago or 15 years ago to now. I think it's a world away.
Yeah.
So where does this go for you?
Yeah.
Where does this go for you? Like where... With your work, David, I mean, you must feel quite torn sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Yeah, I think that. I mean, I hate talking about things like anti-aging and things because I think that has a very negative effect on people when they're constantly told that they shouldn't be aging and that they should feel like they should be changing themselves as they age. So I'm kind of like in a dilemma. Is this the right thing to do or not? Like, I don't know. But I guess, I mean, it's more, for me, it's more about kind of focusing on things and like how can we make the skin more healthy and these sorts of things.
Yeah.
And looking and feeling healthy is obviously of benefit psychologically to people.
Sure.
Definitely.
Generally. And I think that there's these kind of positive feedback loops that will exist through that. But I think that as an industry in aesthetics and skincare and things, we have to be very cognizant of that, of not trying to tell people that they should feel bad about looking a particular way or aging or any of these things.
Yeah, and kind
so
of
it's-
exploiting the vulnerability that
Exactly,
definitely social
exactly.
media has
Yeah,
kind of
as-
increased.
yeah.
But this is, I think it is really interesting, isn't it? Because in a way, I guess how I view the sort of the inevitability of social media and people's involvement with it is it's better to understand it as a practitioner, and maybe it's same for you. It's better to understand where this
sure.
is coming from.
Yeah.
Rather than ignore and
Right.
go, no.
You have to. Yeah.
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 It's like there's no sugar household. There's no. We lived next door as kids to like kids who had no TV and no sugar. And I remember they used to come to our cupboards and like rummage through them. You know,
Yeah.
maybe similarly with you guys in
Yeah,
your practices, it's good to actually
Yeah,
have the sweet cupboard a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
bit and so understand
And
it.
go in there with
go
them
in
a
there.
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, because it's very alienating, I think. Like, I think it's quite kind of harmful if if you were to say, well, I don't agree with what, with what you want, because they're being fed all this stuff.
Yeah, totally.
And that's
not realistic, is it?
No, it's not realistic.
Yeah.
And so to sort of prohibit that, or kind of almost it's playing God back, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
And vilifying as well.
Yeah.
You're bad.
You're
thinking
because you
this.
think about this, and
that's
totally.
inappropriate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very so I suppose it's that line of judgmentalism as well, and kind of being this lofty person deciding on someone's look or how someone's brain should present itself.
If you lived at the top of a mountain with pure air, with no access to Wi-Fi.
So it's kind of it's getting the balance between that and then also people not being tempted to make themselves look very odd. As well, so which some people will, and there's this whole thing of body dysmorphia that then comes in, which is quite an interesting.
It's so interesting. Well, because actually, whenever I think of the sort of rising instances of that, I also think about the fact that it's only really now that we talk about how for most women and maybe many men. That disordered eating is like it's just so normal, and because body dysmorphia is so normal, and trying to have any kind of objective measure on what you actually look like and whether or not that's acceptable is almost
I struggle with
impossible.
this, and we've talked about this before on Women Are Mad, haven't we?
Yes.
I struggle with it sometimes, and I think, well, if I'm struggling with it and I have access to people like Jen, and I'm relatively educated in these things, what's this world pouring at me that I'm looking in the mirror and sometimes distorting who I am, and how much do I care? I seem to care more than I think sometimes, So what's... I find it really troubling.
I think it is troubling.
Yeah, it is.
And what do you think, David, in terms of like what you see of that? Because I do wonder if it has got more extreme on the kind of facial front. What we've seen for a long time with bodies is now more focused on faces.
Yeah. I think so. I think there's definitely a rise in it. I think that there's, along with the availability of these things and stuff and awareness, like people are... And also a lack of maybe taste and ability with certain practitioners that people will go to who would just almost enable these things to happen. And you do see people just being able to kind of create these faces that look very odd and things. And then people then just go down this route of thinking, oh, I want to have a bit more here, a bit more there. And then they can do it because they'll go to somebody who just will do it for them. So it's odd.
They get
skewed. They get very
skewed.
skewed, and they think, oh, I've got a little bit of a line here that I want to deal with, which is just not going. So I need more Botox there. I need more filler here and stuff, and this has happened. I need to balance that, and then should I have a facelift at age 39, and these sorts of things. So
it reminds me of that comedy sketch where was it in Father Ted or something where there was a little dent in a car and he tried to knock the dent out. And then it's just a dent in a car.
It's exactly that, isn't it?
Totally.
Once you tweak, it's like a thread that just keeps.
Totally. So, I don't know what the answer is.
I don't either, but I think it is to just kind of keep aware of everything that's going
on. Yeah.
And also I think try to keep grounded with at least one foot on our sort of ethical bank.
Yeah.
And be that person for people with their quandaries and with their questions, like help them to answer it.
For sure. I think that education is a large part of it, and also educating people about skincare and stuff is an important part of all of this world of aesthetics, which to stop it veering into that kind of weird and wonderful
sci-fi landscape.
And also I think like David's educated me hugely on the fact that skincare can actually work.
It's transformative.
Yes, but you're as bad as me. I know you are.
Yeah.
Jen and me both, as you know, scrimp on some crazy things. But David's really helped me understand that it is worth starting with those basics sometimes.
Yeah.
Just to look after yourself. Yeah. I know what you've
got.
And
it does feel better when you do.
It does.
That's undeniable. And I think that's the other point, isn't it? That there is just a reality to you feel better when you're kind of looking your best. Like as far
Yes, and
as
let's
you
acknowledge
see
that.
it.
Yeah.
But I guess it's trying to find that place that is genuinely your best and not the one influenced by
not J-Lo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, we all want to look like J-Lo, but, we're not J-Lo.
Yeah.
I hate to break it to
But also
myself.
we
and,
might, in our own way,
Yeah, great, yes.
be as beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But just different.
Just
Yes.
different. Yeah.
And we should look different.
Yes,
That's the
exactly.
point.
We should.
Yes,
we
good
should. This is the
points.
main thing.
Yes.
People
Stop
need
trying
to
to
look
look
like
the same
themselves.
as each other.
Yeah.
Exactly. Anyway, thank you, Jen. That's been really informative and lovely speaking to you.
Such a pleasure. Thank you for having
If people
me
want to get in touch with you, you guys have your podcast.
Yes,
Women Are
we do.
Mad,
Women Are
which is
Mad.
storming it.
Oh, and I've got a book coming out.
And you have your book
Yes.
coming out.
Yes.
Women Are Angry.
Women Are Angry.
Yes.
Why your rage is hiding and how to let it out.
Yeah.
July the 4th.
July the 4th. Thank you, Salima. Yeah.
Amazing. And that's going to be available everywhere.
So it's available now from all booksellers.
Amazing. Cool. Thanks, Jen. That's great.
Thank you.
So that was Jen Cox. She is the author of Women Are Angry, which is available from all booksellers, including Waterstones. She has her social media profile. She also co-hosts a podcast with Salima, as I said, which is called Women Are Mad. So don't forget to subscribe to that. And if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to my podcast, Face Values, on whichever platform you listen to your podcasts on.